Hello. What is this? It is not connecting. You see, you are recording. Hello. Hello. I don't know what is. Hello. Yeah, they are coming.
Hello, Dr. Param.
Yes. Good afternoon.
Hi.
Greetings to you. How are you?
Fine. How are you?
Yes, I'm fine. How are you? Great here.
Getting my background here. Kendrick Lamar is an American rapper, so
Oh, okay.
I love that. So I hope this all works. We'll see.
Yes.
Very good to see you.
In fact, I'm waiting for today's session to hear from people.
Just one sec. One sec.
Yeah.
Sorry, I'm just preparing for this. Nanette and I are just preparing for the call as we meet. Hi, Duncan.
Hello, Peter.
And this is Dr. Param.
Hello, Mr. Duncan. Dr. Param here. Greetings from India. Nice to see you.
Indeed. And I wanted to say I appreciated your article on humiliation and racism and things like that. It was very interesting. Thank you.
Oh, good. Thank you for saying so. I appreciate that.
I don't think that's the whole story, though.
Okay, write a critique. Write a comment.
So I would be curious about how you feel about Robin DiAngelo and white fragility and all of that.
You know, I haven't read it. I have a hard time generally with white fragility, but I also have a hard time with insensitivity to the experience of white people and to their feelings of suffering. So it's complicated.
Yeah, it is. But that's exactly what I appreciated in the article that you wrote. And I think it's what that book and that whole movement tends to ignore.
Yeah.
It's shaming, I think.
Yeah,
and,
I agree. I agree. That's a terrible problem. Another call. For another call. Hi, Nanette.
yeah.
Hello, Dr. Param. Hi,
Hello. Hello.
Hello.
That might be Perry, the 202 number there.
Yes, that is me. That is me. I'm not near my laptop, so I'm just calling in.
Hi, Perry. Hello, Bruce.
Hi, Nanette.
Hello.
Hello, Bruce.
Hi, Bruce.
Hi, guys.
Hey, Peter.
Hi, Bradley. Welcome.
I just wrote you, Bruce, this morning. I don't know if you got it.
Okay, thanks, Peter. Did you see my note about your addressing to the did you see that? I sent you an email too.
Okay. A note about my dressing.
You addressed the email to someone. You were addressing someone who wasn't on the address.
Oh, Maitreya, I didn't read yours, but I didn't realize that. So
Bruce, I took care of that. I sent it on to her.
Okay. You're always backstopping everybody.
great.
Hi, Susan. Welcome.
Oh, yeah. Wonderful. Hi, Bradley. Hi, Susan. So good to see you.
Hi.
Been a while.
Hi, Susan.
Zoom has gotten so commonplace. It's kind of like we're actually seeing each other in person.
We're going to wait a couple.
I hope you're wrong about that.
Just giving it another, 2 or so minutes.
The Europeans who are supposedly coming aren't on yet.
No, that's right.
Hi, Bradley.
Yeah, good to see you in person.
Hi.
All right, we'll do just another minute or so. Hi, Carolyn. Welcome.
Hi.
Wow.
Nice to see you, Nanette.
You too. It's been a while.
This camera set here.
I'm wondering if there's a chance that since we were expecting a number of people from Europe, if do they all realize they're not going to receive a separate Zoom invitation right before the call? I wonder.
I had heard from Elaine. She told me who was coming.
But none of them are here, so I'm wondering if they think they're going to get something else to invite them.
Yeah, I don't know. I can email Elaine. I mean, Elaine's on another call now, so I'm not sure she's going to be able to share any information. You know what I'll do? I will just, I only have the email from Motir, so I will share the invitation with him in case he, let's see.
Hi, Freya.
Freya, hello, welcome.
Hi.
Hi. Oh.
Cool. Okay. All Americans, though, so far.
Yeah.
I mean, Americans, United Statesians.
Well, except for Dr. Param, we have our.
Dr. Param, absolutely.
Yes, yes, Danny.
All right, we're just going to start in another half a moment. So I guess this is a good moment to start. Welcome to all, Rand and Shreya. So, all right, let's start. Hopefully some of our European colleagues will join us once we've started. So welcome everyone. I think this is our third PISLAP community call as opposed to a call with a presentation. And so the subject of our call today is how each of us is working to introduce a spiritual dimension into our work. What's been effective for us, where have we encountered obstacles, and how we can support each other to do the work. So we're going to leave time. The bulk of the call will be time for folks to share and some dialogue. And we can also use the chat room to aid us in this. And if folks wouldn't mind putting their email in the chat room, it would be good to, we might send a follow-up email after the call, and it'd be good to have everyone's email addresses handy. So to begin, we're going to start in sort of our traditional way, which is for folks to say their name and where they're physically located. Then Peter's going to share a few thoughts about PISLAP and where PISLAP is in this moment. And then we're going to come back and open the floor to sharing around the question for the meeting. So hope that works for everyone as a design for the call. And welcome, Motir. Good to have you. So Peter, I'll turn it over to you to lead the name and location piece.
Okay, if you would, for this first round, just quickly, just say your name, and I will go simply down the screen here and say where you are, and if you want, you can say something about what you see wherever you are. What's around you? In this case, no more than a sentence or two. And we'll begin with our guest from India, Dr. Param.
Oh, yeah. So greeting, is it audible?
Yes.
It's audible.
Yeah, yeah. Yeah, greetings from India to each and everyone here. I am in my house, which is in Gujarat, the western part of India. And one interesting thing that I noticed yesterday is that when I was in the second floor at the balcony behind, I saw a beautiful deer passing by.
Ah,
So that made my day yesterday, and still I am enjoying that. And I have taken a photograph, and I will share it with all of you. From where it came, I am still surprised, but it was a deer to see, beautiful one.
thank you very much. Beautiful. All right, I'm Peter Gable, and I'm in San Francisco. And I'm in my son's room when he used to live here, which he doesn't anymore. And you can see Kendrick Lamar behind me, the American rapper, to give you a sense of what my son is like. He's a hip hop artist. Duncan Holloman, sorry, Dunk.
So yes, Duncan Holloman. I'm in Cambridge, Massachusetts. It is very hot here. It's like 95. And I am across the street from the Mount Auburn Hospital.
Great, thank you. Nanette.
Sorry, I was muted. Hi, everyone. I'm here in New York City, sitting at my kitchen table where I work usually, and looking out the window at the trees, but it's also about 95 degrees here. It's very, very hot. Great to be here.
Thanks, Nanette. And Bruce, say your whole name, Bruce Peterson.
I'm Bruce Peterson. I'm in my home office in Minneapolis, and I don't see too much besides books and papers around me, but it's a very nice day out.
Thank you. Bradley Roth.
Hi, my name is Bradley Roth. I'm house sitting for a friend in New York City. They have a beautiful apartment overlooking Central Park. This morning I saw a Black Lives Matter protest. Seems to be, I think it was the 8-minute protest. It was very short in front of one of Trump's towers. But it's a beautiful day.
Thank you. Carolyn Hanson, nice to see you.
Hi, Peter. Good to see you. I'm in Stone Ridge, New York, 2 hours north of New York City, in a suburban agricultural area. And when I look past my computer monitor, I'm looking out a window at a porch overhang with 3 birds' nests. And this is my home office. It has been for 19 years.
Beautiful, thank you. Rand Rosenblatt.
Hello, greetings from Philadelphia, Pennsylvania. I'm in my home office. It's hot here too in the 90s, and I can see beautiful flowers and mature trees all around in this residential city neighborhood.
Ah, thank you, lovely. Motir Rahman.
Hi, Mothia. I'm in England, in Totnes, a small little town in the south of England, and I can see blue sky and green leaves outside my window.
Thanks so much, Motir. And Kelly McGrath.
Hi, I'm in Tallahassee, Florida, and it's also pretty warm here, but I am looking out my side window at some mature live oak trees with Spanish moss, and there's a hummingbird feeder nearby as well. So I'm just getting delighted all around.
Beautiful, beautiful. Thank you, Kelly. And Deborah Clemenson.
Hi, I'm also in Minneapolis. We're finally temperate here, and I'm looking out my window at the perennial garden that has just flourished given the weather situation. Finally saw a hummingbird. Just Kelly.
Thanks. We have a hummingbird feeder too, but no hummingbirds yet here. Susan Brooks. You're mute, Susan.
I'm muted. Okay.
Susan, you're a little frozen. How about if I come right back to you?
Okay, I can turn off my camera. That might make it better.
Okay, then go
Is
ahead.
that,
That's good. Yeah.
can you hear me?
Yes.
Yeah. I am over the lake on my deck.
Okay, I got that. Philadelphia over the lake on your deck is what we got. And thank you, Susan, and great to see you. Maitreya. You're muted.
Hi, I'm on a not great connection in Chico, California, but I just got home and I can get on my computer for the rest of the call. And I was driving through very beautiful tree canopy all over this very beautiful little town.
Wonderful. Thank you. Victor Naro.
Sorry, I'm late. I was on another call, but Inspector Naro from Los Angeles. I work at the UCLA Labor Center. I also teach at UCLA Law School at the Public Interest Law Program. I've been, I just joined officially 2 weeks ago. I've been with this space for a few years, but last week I joined as a member, so I made my donation, my membership fee. But I'm grateful to be in this space, and you know, I'm also a movement chaplain and a spiritualist, and I try to figure out the integration of spirituality and activism in every pieces, every way I can with my students or my fellow advocates. But I love this space, so thank you for you know, this coming together.
Thank you, Victor. Wonderful. And Perry, Mr. 202. We don't have your name, so Perry.
Yeah, this is Perry Threadman. I am in Washington, D.C., joining by phone. And I'm in the living room of my townhouse, looking out over a very nice grouping of trees, but it is hot as you know what outside. It's like 95 to 100. So I'll be staying inside today.
Thanks, Perry. And that's everybody. Has anybody not been able to check in yet? Okay, then Nanette, back to you.
Yes. Actually, Peter, I'll be turning it back to you because I think we were going to have you say a few words about PISLAP.
Okay. So PISLAP, the project for integrating spirituality, law, and politics. I think everybody on this call understands us, but or knows about us or is part of us. But well, we are aspiring to create a world in which people can become more open-hearted, in which consciousness can be elevated, and we can fully see one another's humanity, and create a world that's founded upon love and human connection and empathy and compassion. And but we're not just trying to do that through a spiritual practice, which many people, of course, do try and get in touch with their authentic being through private practices of spirituality. But at the same time, we feel there has to be a transformation of the surrounding world that conditions us, that shapes the current reality, that manifests either justice or injustice. And so our simultaneous effort is to elevate consciousness, spiritual consciousness, and transform the social reality around us so that it becomes an embodiment of what we're each trying to become ourselves. And that's an activist politics with a spiritual dimension. And the distinctive thing about our group is that we are law. We are the law, legal dimension, the lawyers, the law teachers, the law students, and we are trying in our arena to transform the meaning of justice and the meaning of legal intervention in the culture so that it embodies this higher spiritual and political aspiration. So that's who we are, I think.
Thank you, Peter. That was great. So everyone, sort of building on that and what Peter just expressed, and your own work, the floor is open now for folks to share. And just going back to kind of review the question as we had sort of framed it, which is, how is each of us trying to introduce a spiritual dimension into the work that we're doing? What's been effective for us? Where have we encountered roadblocks, and how can we support each other to do the work? So let me just open it up and see if anyone wants to jump in first.
I guess I would add that we are trying to do, for many years, we've done calls where there's a presentation followed by discussion with the presenter. And we've recently been opening up to these community calls to give us an opportunity to just talk to each other about things that of importance, to get to know one another. And that's the basis of this call today as a community call. So this time we've got a question to try and address how each of us is incorporating a spiritual dimension into our work.
It looks like Maitreya wants to start.
I'm going to jump in because I'm somewhat newly discovered PISLAP. I sent an email to whoever gets the info email because I'm looking for a mentor.
We did respond to you.
Oh, I haven't seen it yet because I've been on the run all morning with stuff. But yeah, more on that. So I am now a professor of legal studies. I teach legal studies at Chico State University. I will be entering into my 4th year, but I practiced criminal law for 23 years. The last 8 years was at the Northern California Innocence Project. So I've, everything from trial, appellate, and then post-conviction work in an innocence project. So, and I now teach criminal law, criminal procedure, moot court, trial and appellate advocacy, and I supervise a legal information clinic in Chico. And how I am integrating spirituality, I've done an experiment using a mindfulness app in one of my sections of moot court. That was just a study, just a little pilot, and to see if my students would take to meditating for a couple of minutes a day. That was not a lot. We didn't get a lot of participation, but it was an interesting experiment. What I'm currently about to do is I'm about to have to teach my classes online this fall, or get to teach my classes online. And one of them is criminal procedure. And I'm going to, in lieu of lectures, I'm going to do a podcast that I'm calling Transforming Criminal Procedure. And each of the episodes of the podcast, I'll have one a week. They'll be mostly people drawn from the innocence community. So exonerees from wrongful conviction cases, lawyers working in that field, forensic scientists, a couple of them working in that field. And I'll have them correspond to the topics that we're teaching. So for just the one example I'll give is a Fifth Amendment. The overarching theme is what happens when these rights, as they are meant to protect the accused, break down. So they'll be learning about the different rights in the class and then having examples of what happens when it breaks down. So of the Fifth Amendment privilege not to incriminate yourself, when that breaks down, the worst possible outcome is an innocent person falsely confesses and then goes to prison on a conviction for something that they did not do, right? And so I have many people to draw from who have confessed falsely and later were exonerated. So that's an example. A false confession case is an example of how you get a breakdown in the Fifth Amendment. But what the angle that I want, the unifying theme of the podcast I want to be, what principle or belief or practice got you through your ordeal? And that can be whether it's the client or the lawyer, because lawyers working in this field are tortured by their sense of not being able to help fast enough, well enough, trying to save people is a real unifying general mindset of the innocence lawyer. And so what principles or practices get you through it? What belief keeps you going, got you going? And then what do you actually do to get, so there's the belief, a lot of people, it's justice, it's not necessarily a spiritual belief, but what did they actually do? How do you actually care for yourself and walk through life doing this work that is so hard, or being in this situation that is so impossible, and come out the other side of it? And so that's kind of there are a lot of people out there talking about wrongful convictions, but that's my little angle, and I have access to a lot of these people from my work. So and there are enormous, the grace among the people in this world is really hard to miss. So I kind of just want to try to get it broadcast so people can hear it and be exposed to it and see how sometimes the most impossible, terrible, demoralizing things have led people into their own personal transformations.
Interesting.
Thank you, Maitreya. That's wonderful. And just a short comment, which is that I think I see justice and as a spiritual belief as well. So to the extent that that's part of what you're doing there, to me, that's totally connected to it. Sounds like wonderful work. If anyone wants to, we have if folks want to respond in any way before we go on to the next person, please feel free.
I would like to offer
to tell Maitreya that I think her project is wonderful and I wish you the best.
Kelly, I saw that you were trying to speak.
I just do want to offer, if you need anything with restorative justice, be happy to talk to you. I founded the Florida Restorative Justice Association several years ago, and I do serious harm cases. I just had a rape case that the person who harmed decided not to go to the police. I know this is different because you're in the criminal context, but also be happy to offer anything to help your class if you decide to go that route in any way or talk to them. So
yeah, I want to have a restorative justice episode just because it's a powerful tool. But oh my God, thank you. Yeah, I'm going to get the chat.
Yeah, let me know if you can email me, remind me where you are, and I'll try to get the advocate group or advocates I know in your region too.
Great, thank you.
There. And just for me to answer the question, I am using spirituality now in trying for my own practice. So one of the things I just did is I got a spirit guide reading from an attorney who now is a channeler. Her name's Amanda Lamond, and she was kind of a type A attorney, hard and fast, kind of conservative, and started getting these messages from the spirit world. And now she's the last 2 years she's been offering that. So I found her through a friend, and she has a little chat with you, and then she waits for these answers to come. And what came for me was that instead of marketing and trying to do a lot of the marketing funnels and different things, I need to focus on letting my light shine. And I need to work on, my work is to make sure that I'm grounded and I have presence and I attend to my spiritual needs more than my checklists for my marketing and for my getting stuff on Facebook and writing my blogs and things like that. And that I need to, my practice is going to, my work is going to entail learning about helping strengthening my intuition. So I guess my guess is that I haven't been using my intuition as much as I can be. So I am starting in that realm. And she gave me a book and this person's workshop that I can attend. But I think for me, it's about not liking the idea, resisting the idea of selling myself to anyone. And now I know I don't have to do that. So, and these groups are amazing too. I'm always, my heart is so full when I get done with one of these groups meetings. So yeah, that's where my work lies. It lies within me to let my light shine and practice my work so that I can help more people and attract more people to me without being in a way that's not in alignment with who I am. So good question. Thanks.
Thank you.
Thank you, Kelly. Dr. Param, I think you had your hand.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you for the brilliant opportunity. In fact, I was eagerly looking forward for this webinar. If I can say very simply, first thing that I do here in introducing spirituality in legal education or legal system is that to make the participants experience a state of consciousness which is not only transcending but also all inclusive and embracing. So what I do is the first class, the first few sessions is to make them understand the definition of spirituality or the meaning of spirituality, and I explain it as such. Spirituality means an awakening to a greater reality other than one's own mind, life and energy, or in addition to mind, life and energy that we are composed of as a human being. There is a state of consciousness that is above or deep within, which is transcending the current nature of the personality of human emotions and thoughts and so on, or the psychological or the social conditionings and so on. So to make them first understand intellectually that spirituality is just not any thought process or any psychological understanding or emotions. It is a state of new consciousness in which it is not only transcending all limitations but also inclusive of each and everything. As a result of creating this kind of a, what I call a compartmentalization in the consciousness of the human side, the students or my participants, they start observing, oh, there is a witness self in me with which I can witness everything. So that separation and that sense of a new identity or a core personality brings them some fresh approach. So this is where my whole method is to make them meditate, let the silence seep in, let that breath of new consciousness get into them and make them come out of the limited, suffocating personality to something very vast, something very silent, very beautiful. And from there, they are able to think differently. Because this new consciousness, when it gets awakened in oneself, it has a very interesting impact on the existing mind, emotion, and thought process itself. So they're thinking on legal process, they're thinking on legal understanding, or any issue. Take the case of kind of say injury to a human being, or extreme violence to a particular person, or some kind of a petty theft like a stealing and so on. Why does these things happen? These things happen precisely because of a certain conditionings, certain subconscious, certain past baggages. So to make them first understand that you are not all the past baggages, your core personality or true personality is not what you think, what you feel, and what you are conditioned. Rather, you are in an unlimited zone of consciousness. First raise to that level. So how do I do that? I actually bring it in myself while going, even before going to the class or to the training. I attune myself to that state of consciousness and go there. And slowly bring that in my speech, slowly bring that in the words and so on. This intellectual understanding itself is very important for the first beginners in order to experience the state of consciousness later. Otherwise, what happens? They think that spirituality is yet another subject to be studied intellectually. I used to say, yeah, spirituality can be studied intellectually only when you have the experience first of that state of higher consciousness, deeper consciousness, or vaster consciousness, whatever be it. And you can see that awakening impacting your mind, impacting your emotions, impacting your thought process. Then you tend to think very differently of the same legal ideas, rights, remedies, justice, violence, injuries, and so on. But I have one help that I would like to require from all of you. That is exactly what my important request to all of you is that all the participants, be it training or students or lawyers, whomsoever I do, they all look for a literature of this kind of intersection of spirituality in law, legal thinking, and justice. It is not yet there. Very few people have written. So what I did was recently, during the lockdown period, I made close to some 15 webinars on spirituality to corporates, to lawyers, to judges, and so on. Everyone is asking one single question. What you are saying is convincing to us, but where is the literature available? I give them articles from here and there, but it doesn't suffice to them. So I immediately entered into a contract with the international publishers saying that I want to bring out a book on spirituality and its intersection with law and justice. And here I submit this humble request to all of you that I will be writing a mail to each and every one of you. And I have created a format of what I want in this book. So if you can contribute, say, maximum of 4,000 words or 5,000 words at the maximum, not much. And I'm going to bring out, say, a book by Thomson Reuters or from Elsevier. Both of them are willing to publish it. So I would be very happy if you all concede and give an article. I will send all the mails and the details and the format of how we need to address this.
Thank you.
And Elsevier also said that they want to bring it out as a volume study. And there are some students who are very interested to work under me to bring this, and my training program also keeps increasing. So I feel there is a lack of material, and I would be very happy if everyone helps me with that.
Thanks, Dr. Param.
Yes, this is the work that I am interested in doing, and this is what I want to take. And I realize we need to compartmentalize two things: spirituality in legal education as a conceptual understanding, and spirituality is an experience by which they experience and they bring it in their practice, which is legal profession or justice profession.
Very good. Excellent point.
Yeah.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you. Thanks a lot.
Both the experience and the idea. Very good point.
Yes.
Nanette, are you
Sorry.
muted?
Oh, I was muted. Sorry. Duncan, I think you were next. Duncan Holloman.
I wanted to come back to the question about restorative justice and maybe make it a bit more concrete, and maybe make a distinction between two different kinds of spiritual practices. So it sounds like, Dr. Param, that part of what you're focusing on is an individual practice, mindfulness, attaining higher levels of consciousness as an individual practice. And yet there are other practices that are more relational, which is something I've been thinking about a lot. So in particular, with regard to restorative justice, for people who are actually doing that work, do you find like the notions of atonement and forgiveness are spiritual concepts for people, or are they not necessarily spiritual? That is, if we're going to try to understand how we bring in spirituality, for some people, those are spiritual concepts, for other people, not so much. And I'm just really curious about that.
Go ahead.
Okay.
Does a restorative practitioner want to respond to Duncan's question?
This is Kelly again. I've had both experiences, but and like one of them was a murder case where the people whose daughter was murdered, she was on life support, and they had an experience of a vision of their, a vision telling them, a vision from her telling them to forgive the person who killed her. Ultimately, she was taken off life support a few days later. And they had recently went through a forgiveness workshop prior to this shooting. So for them, the forgiveness aspect was a spiritual part of their practice. I also recently had a case where someone, the rape case I was talking about, the person who did harm wanted to atone and wanted to know what he could do to make things as right as possible and for it to never happen again. He apologized, asked for forgiveness, and wanted to know what he could do to atone. I personally think forgiveness in general is a spiritual practice because you are trying to get in alignment with your higher self and your values of that higher self. So it's a great question. I'm gonna bring this to my group, to the wider restorative justice group, to really think about and talk about. But that's just my personal experience and opinion. I'd love to hear what other people think.
Deborah.
Yeah, this is a side door to what everyone else is talking about, but those of us from Minneapolis are keenly aware that we need to do systemic anti-racism work. That the time is now. There is no moving back from that. And I was very pleased, Nanette, when you said justice is a spiritual issue, and it truly is. So I think we're in the Collaborative Law Institute, we have started to unpack this. That in my alma mater, we're unpacking this. It is in the air we breathe in Minneapolis right now. So I am really open to anyone's ideas about how to make this authentically a spiritual experience for everybody involved on both sides of that equation, because it is huge, and it is now.
And one of the things I'll tack onto that, Deborah, I'm from Minneapolis too.
Yeah.
And we are, I don't know what's happening elsewhere, but we are experiencing a magnificent shift, a 180-degree shift in thinking. And it's all centered by the George Floyd murder. Is one of the most dramatic things that has happened here. And I think it's also been waves of that all around the world. But the shift of that gets us into more of a spiritual space. And all of a sudden we see the things that have happened to the Blacks in the United States and elsewhere in a much clearer light, and say, my God, what's been going on? Like we're waking up to this feeling of the understanding, the awareness of what's going on with minorities, including Blacks, including Jews, including anybody that's been part of a bias. And so that's something that happens in restorative justice because it happens naturally. If some people are centered in that, maybe one person even, it goes around the circle, people start getting it. Goes around the circle, they get it again, they get it deeper, they get it deeper. It's the same thing that happens in collaborative law. When we sit there with the practitioners are sending their love and regard and support, and they're helping the conflicted couple to get it by transmission, not by teaching, by learning, by feeling it. And all of a sudden they start looking at it differently, and they start experiencing something of the shift. Well, that shift is happening around the world, and it's a shift that's never going to go back to the 1%, 99%. It's impossible. It'll take some time. It won't take as much time as we thought because these shifts are happening so fast. When the president of the National Football League, after crucifying this quarterback for taking a knee in the national anthem for 5 years, and all of a sudden saying, hey, what have we been doing? I apologize. Somebody should hire him. What the heck, 180 degrees. And that's happening. Anyway, blah, blah, blah. Thanks, Deborah.
I was going to ask in response, if Nanette, is it okay if I just
go ahead.
Say, I don't want to put you on the spot, Elaine Quinn. Great to see you. But I know that you are the editor of The Conscious Lawyer, and you have just interviewed Rhonda McGee about her book, The Inner Work of Racial Justice. And I wondered if the interview itself raised any points about sort of the spiritual dimension of racial justice work that we're discussing now.
Hello, everybody. Nice to see you all.
London, England, by the way, Elaine is from.
Yes.
Go ahead.
Sorry, I'm still a bit in a kind of, I was in the interview space for about an hour and a half, and we did have a great conversation, and I've been reading Rhonda's book for the past what can I say? I think one of the things that struck me about reading her book and her approach, I suppose, because it's a mindful, contemplative approach, I was kind of saying to her that, you know, as a lawyer, you know, especially, I could choose to read a book about Black history or
Hello.
about this issue, and it would be facts and history, you know, and I'd kind of stay in my head and I'd be thinking about it, and I probably might have some uncomfortable emotion, not quite sure what it meant, and, you know, put the book back on the shelf and may not change very much. But I found with reading her book, because it has a very deep contemplative approach, she's constantly asking you to pause, to reflect, to notice what's happening in your own body, to she has about maybe, you know, 25 practices in the book too, you know, really looking at your own ancestry, your own background. And it's a very deep learning experience. And I definitely have found that it's affected me, you know, in a way that a normal book wouldn't, particularly again as a lawyer, you know, where we tend to read things on an intellectual level. So I noticed, you know, it's kind of this living inquiry that I notice it's changing, you know, I'm kind of bringing the book with me and looking at people differently and that kind of thing. So that's what's coming up for me when you ask me the question. And I suppose her approach is through, you know, she would invite people into a circle, and she has an approach that she's termed color insight, but I think it's essentially is this contemplative approach to racial justice, where she also invites people to tell their own race stories and the value of listening to each other, and how that changes us, you know, and that we have to do this in community. Yeah.
Thank you, Elaine.
Thanks, and yeah, good to see you all. And I'm sorry I've missed. I apologize for missing the start of the conversation. Our own conversation started late, so
that's fine. That's fine. And Rhonda had actually been had spoken a number of months ago on one of our community calls as well. So other folks want to reflect or address some of the points that were raised? And also welcome to Kim, by the way, who joined us in a little bit ago. Liz, I don't know if you want to jump in. I know you've been in the world of criminal law. I didn't know if these thoughts on restorative justice and spirituality resonated with you.
Yeah, hi everyone, I'm Elizabeth Latimer. I practice criminal law in Chico, California, Butte County. And it's funny, I just wrote a private Zoom chat to Kelly saying that since the pandemic has started, I've begun kind of an informal working group with the criminal defense lawyers here to try to make sure that we don't lose too much ground collectively because we're not able to see one another in person. And a lot of information and tricks of the trade and wisdom gets traded in the courtrooms and in the halls of the courthouse between criminal defense lawyers. So in an effort to keep that flow of information going, I started a Zoom working group. And one of the things I would like to bring to the group is the concept of restorative justice. We don't have, our DA is actually deeply opposed to restorative justice work. The one time that I broached it with him, he was just like, oh, like, don't even say those two words, basically. And he manifests opposition to a lot of what are, to me, very clear criminal justice reforms that need to take place. I think he's one of the longest running DAs in the country. He's been around for like 43 years. But so what I would like to do is get the criminal justice group at least informed about the possibilities so that we can start energizing our work to try to manifest that here in Butte County, restorative justice. And lots of criminal justice reform, you know, and I do believe, I believe very strongly that all of this is rooted in what spirituality, that word is somewhat obviously very broad, but it's all rooted in something that, like Maitreya was saying, keeps us going. There has to be some reason that we would spend so many hours and spend so much of our life force working toward something else other than what already exists. And for me, spirituality covers that topic. And I'm reading Rhonda McGee's book too, and it's all very connected to me. That said, I really struggle to stay energized. I struggle to root in my practice. I struggle to get to these calls, even though I know without a doubt, that it's an essential ingredient to who I am. It's really the thing that kind of goes first when I hit a wall. So, and that's an issue I've had forever. I'm always trying to work that out. It's like Kelly was saying, what was told to her by the spiritual guide channeler was, the thing to do is like step back from the ins and outs of the work, down more deeply. And for me, that's always been really challenging, even though I know it's essential.
Liz, I had a question. In terms of the opposition of the DA and Chico to restorative justice, restorative practices,
Yeah.
is it an opposition to that whole sort of spiritual dimension, or is it just more, where do you think it comes from?
He's very pro-incarceration. So he's also opposed to mental health diversion, opposed, not in theory, but in practice on the day-to-day. I'm filing a motion in opposition to your request for drug treatment. I'm filing a motion in opposition to your request for mental health diversion. Things that are already in place that acknowledge that incarceration is kind of a very, very antiquated, like outdated way to treat someone in terms of making them back part of what we think of as a healthy society. His office is just not, he just doesn't believe that stuff in practice. So it's just a lot of jail, it's a lot of prison recommendations. It's a lot of, that's not our problem, or I don't know what that means, or why are you telling me he's schizophrenic? That doesn't make any difference, a lot of that.
Elizabeth, this is Bruce Peterson. I just have a thought for what it's worth. I was a judge for 20 years, recently retired, and I spent a lot of time struggling with people who didn't believe in the things I was promoting. And I had modest successes and a lot of failures. And I think we've heard a couple of things here today that are very useful. Dr. Parham has told us that the spiritual consciousness is a reality above and beyond our conditioning that allows us to transcend the limitations that we've had. And Stu, I'm in Minneapolis also, Stu said, we have a spiritual transformation going on here because people are seeing everything differently, not just the criminal justice system, Deb, but the mental health system, the housing system, the healthcare system.
Charities everywhere.
We're seeing things differently. So someone like this DA, I feel like I know him. There's a great deal of resistance directed towards people who are trying to reform systems. Part of it is just an institutional vested interest in the status quo, but part of it is a psychological vested interest in a rigidity and tightness. People are pushing against the hope, the subdued hope that things could be better. And so I've seen enormous resistance from people I didn't understand why, understand them better, and why they're holding on so tight to a restriction. Now, I don't want to be overly dramatic, but peacemakers get killed. I mean, Martin Luther King and Bobby Kennedy and the Rabin and Sadat and Gandhi and Lincoln and Jesus. So all these people, so what are the solutions? The solutions are transformation. If you could get this DA to sit in on, God forbid, I don't know how you do it, a restorative justice circle, or to sit in on a calendar call in a drug court where people are hugging each other. Transformative experience. The other thing that is crucial that I see now with the hindsight that I didn't see so clearly during the 20 years I was struggling is spiritual people can only survive in cooperation with each other. You know, you have to feed off what other people have and what other people can offer you, because you see so much of this resistance. And I always was I collaborate with Stu and Deb once in a while, people like that, but I mostly did my own thing and didn't value enough the strength from other people, which is why I feel like PISLAP is such an important resource to see. So we spiritually oriented people can get the energy and the refreshment to keep going from each other. So I didn't mean to give you that much advice, but those are the thoughts I had. I've been where you've been.
Appreciate it.
Excellent, Bruce. Thank you.
Thanks so much, Bruce. Anyone
It's
else?
Mathor had his hand up, I think.
Oh, sorry.
Duncan and Mathor.
I think Duncan just had a direct thing
Duncan,
to say to Bruce, but I might
right.
say something.
But you had your hand up way before I did, so I saw that little finger quite a while.
I didn't see it. Sorry. Go ahead.
Yeah, I was going to go sort of back to this point around, you know, what the spiritual dimension is, with Dr. Param mentioning about the higher consciousness, which I think is real. And then I'm also just thinking about the different cultures in which the spirituality grows in. So in Indian culture has as its groundwork the interconnection that's already existing. And what I'm noticing in Europe, I'm a diasporic identity, you know, my parents from Bangladesh, but it has that connection, but there's a level at which the sense of the individual comes prominent. And so when you introduce spirituality or that kind of level, it becomes extracted to say, okay, what strategy can we use to make this work? So, you know, you have stress-based reduction, or you have some other method and it's whether or not, you know, how do we bring the spiritual dimension, which goes deeper into the ethics, as well as just another individual tool to be used. And that comes into that question of relational aspect, I think, which was mentioned before. And for me, when we think about justice, often it's the political justice, or there isn't much on the civic level of what I would say civic justice, or you could say economic justice, of individuals coming together for their own economic livelihoods in a way. And I'm thinking here of the co-op culture in particular. Say
that again, please.
The cooperative culture that emerged in England in sort of the 1700s. And, you know, we have a very strong, almost like a legal framework that actively seeks to disconnect people from each other. And how do we create a sort of a culture or even a legal framework that actively seeks to mutualize or bring people together? And that for me was the co-op culture. And I just want to read, because you might not be, there's the mutualization sort of movement began with a group of laborers in 1775 with this article I was reading about the co-op culture. And there's a sentence here about somebody who's just describing how that started. And they said it was just a group of ordinary laborers, you know, meeting in a pub, the Golden Cross Inn, now pulled down, where the landlord, Richard Kelly, put down a jar that was empty, not full of beer, and set a challenge. Each person was to put in a coin and repeat the same process on a weekly basis until the jar was full, and they drew lots to see who would then use the money to buy materials to build their own house. They all continued to fill the jar over the months that followed until all 20 people had built their own home. And that, even though we don't think of it spiritual, is a way of people actively seeking and connecting to bring a level of spirituality that we don't even notice anymore, because we're in such a fragmented culture. And it feels to me that's kind of the level that I'm working on in a way. So with some Scottish communities, I'm working in Scotland, where to actively make people realize that they can find justice in their communities, or by working together. So I'm working with the councillors where they are coming together to actually, they think some of their councillors have been, you know, doing some backhanders. So I'm getting them to work with their what's called the procurator, and an agency that investigates the civic level, whether the councillors have actually done any wrong. So that's not, it's just getting them to actually understand they can do that. And so it brings agency into their lives. And actually as well with Extinction Rebellion, there's been a big question around this whole sort of racial justice question that people have brought in as well. So I've been working a lot with that. And for me, sometimes the spiritual and the ecological have sometimes seemed to be a space where the privileged are enabled to be actively involved in. But where the not, where ordinary laborers, as of that example there, or now the diasporic cultures, Black people or BIPOC, which haven't had a sense of belonging or connection, that's kind of a level I'm trying to work on as well, to give them a sense of agency. And that to me is a level of spirituality as well.
Thank you, Motir. That's a wonderful example of real practical cooperative spirituality. Appreciate that. And Duncan, I know you've been waiting. Go right ahead.
Yeah, I just wanted to chime in also then about the notion that spirituality is somehow at a higher level, and it is and it isn't, right? Sometimes it just is our ordinary relationships with one another. So I appreciate what Matteo was pointing out, right? That it was not people that were necessarily highly spiritually evolved. There's a kind of spiritual materialism here, something that we need to be careful about. And I would ask Elizabeth, whether or not the DA that she's talking to actually has his own spiritual value. It's just that his value is a bit different from yours. And so it might be that there's a conversation there at some level, because for him, the relation is in between the wrongdoer and the state. And whereas for restorative justice, the relationship is between the wrongdoer and the person that was victimized. So to me, that's a relational question, and it has to do with what your higher value is. For some people, their higher value is that process needs to be abstracted, and it's my relationship with the state. But I think that's part of what we're struggling with, is what is the appropriate relationship here?
Yeah, that's helpful. That's helpful.
Thank you, Duncan. And I think in general, just to comment on that a little further, when we think about the polarization in the United States between people on, both sides of the political spectrum, the fact that sometimes people on the sort of progressive / left side of the spectrum do not always look at a little more deeply into, well, what is the spirituality motivating people that are coming from a very different point of view? It sometimes can deepen the divide. And if we can figure out a way to connect on that level, the one that you're talking about, then I think we stand a better chance of coming together in some way as a community. Deborah.
Yeah, I can't let this pass without just inviting you all to see Ava DuVernay's new film, 13th, about the 13th Amendment. It is illuminating about what has happened since the right to vote was extended to Black people in this country. It is illuminating. And I should say, illuminating, chilling, horrifying.
Thank you. Does anyone else? I know we're drawing to a close of our time together today. Does anyone else want to share before we try to conclude?
I have a concluding.
Carolyn has her hand up.
What is Dr. Perra?
I just would like to quickly say, as someone who's studied energy healing for 10 years and does it, and also gets guidance for my healing clients, Harmonic induction is real. The intention that you hold in your consciousness is reflected in your energetic field, and it affects everyone around you. So Elizabeth, whenever you're with that DA, whether you're aware of it or not, he's being affected by what you're holding, and it will affect him over time. The other thing is to consider not phrasing it in terms of how does he view, like, is he looking for justice for the state? But if you do have a conversation with him, don't make it any questions about what he does. Keep it at a higher level and talk about being in service for a greater good, being in service for society, because I suspect ultimately that's what he thinks he's doing. And if you reach him with language that he relates to, then you open the door for continued harmonious contact. When I transformed my law practice 25 years ago, when I decided to view everyone as a spiritual being without ever saying a word, and it magically changed my relations with my clients and the other side. So I firmly believe that you will have an impact, and good luck.
Thank you.
Thank you, Carolyn. Does anyone else want to, oh, Dr. Param, yes.
Yeah. What she just now, Caroline, told makes a tremendous impact, because spirituality is a subjective evidence. Nobody can deny it. It is like love, it is like forgiveness, it is like empathy. So when we have that spiritual consciousness, it does impact immediately on the other side. And one more point that I needed to add to clarify is that spirituality has to be seen at two levels as far as this law, legal system, and justice are concerned. One is the restorative justice, where course correction is required for victim and offender. There is one angle of spirituality which is preventive in nature, because spirituality means a coherent consciousness, a higher consciousness, inclusive and sustainable consciousness that will not make anybody commit a crime, as a result of which we can create a healthy society of a spiritual nature itself. So we need to identify spirituality from the point of view of preventive injustice, preventive injuries. Next aspect of spirituality is, in case crime takes place, what should we do? That's exactly the course correction comes, where restorative justice and other aspects come into picture, where victims and offenders can be healed. And then slowly these two approaches can take to the next level, the third level, what I call it as removal of the causes of the crime itself, the incidents of the crime itself. So if we have this demarcation and distinction very clearly, it becomes very easy to apply spirituality in the point of view of preventive, spirituality in the point of view of the course correction, spirituality to removal, spirituality from the point of view of legal education for students, maybe for policies and judges to a different level of interpretation and so on.
Thank you, Dr. Param. Peter, you wanted to close up for us?
Well, I wanted to say, well, first of all, so as we go out into our worlds, let's take each other with us. So here we all are, struggling to express and articulate something we aspire to very deeply. And it's easier if when you go into the room, if you think we're all there with you, trying to do the same thing. It's always difficult to go into flat spaces where everyone is denying something that you're trying to make happen, and you feel alone. So you're not alone, is what I'm saying. We're all here. That's my first comment. Then the second comment I wanted to make is, we are trying to generate, for lack of a better word, social policy out of these conversations. And out of our last call on child support that we did some time ago, the executive committee did generate a set of policy proposals for the Democratic Party convention, which is taking place next month, and we have submitted them to the platform committee. Basically trying to convert child support law from a punitively structured body of law to one that seeks to mend families, foster co-parenting, and bring people into connection with each other for the betterment of the people and also the children who are affected. So I will send that out. I'll send that out to everybody who I have an email to, so you can see. Well, we did this in 2016 with restorative justice, recommending that the Democratic Party adopt more restorative justice in their platform. And we're doing that this time with this transformation of child support law that we're advocating for, connecting it to the Black Lives Matter movement. So what I'm saying is we're trying to combine this kind of conversation with activist steps that have an impact on the wider culture.
Thank you, Peter, and thank you so much, everyone. And just a reminder, Dr. Param had invited folks to contribute an article in his new book. So he's just wanted to reiterate that. And if anyone did not put their email in the chat, appreciate it. But thank you, and much appreciation, everyone, for their sharing. And be in touch, to be continued.
Thank
Farewell.
you.
Thank you.
So long, everybody.
Bye.
Bye.